Hello everyone. Today we have another group discussions and it will be very interesting discussions because we have a prominent professors, we have authors, we have a debate coach and all of them actually very much expert in education arena, globalizations and AI related activities. We have Professor Valley from Malaysia and he is actually working as a professor from Lim Kok Wing University, Cyberjaya. We have Mr. Anthony and Anthony, he is a famous writer. He has very interesting book and he's going to share with us about his book and AI related activities in the global arena. And you know that many big university following his book. And we have Mr. Mark Weber. Mark Weber contribute a lot in debating arena, and he also has online different interesting activities. And now I think he's working with one of the famous celebrities organization, and his her name is Shakira. So hopefully these sessions will be very much interesting, very much informative for our international community. And by this way, especially we have a more focus on developing nations, and we can grow together, and we can enlighten ourselves from the knowledge of Professor Valley, Mr. Anthony, and Mr. Mark Weber. Hello, Professor Valley. How are you today?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Sharif. Thank you for inviting. Thanks to World Trade Economic Forum. Thanks a lot. It's been my pleasure. I'm happy to meet my co-speakers, Mr. Anthony and then Mr. Mark Weber. It's nice meeting you all and look forward for the debate. Look forward for the
pleasure.
Now. Yes. I just want to focus on the globalizations, and most importantly, education is a very much important point of views right now. And we have a lot of strategy challenges, and most importantly, AI also have very good integrations in education system and globalization concept. So how you want to introduce? I want to go Mr. Professor Valley, then I want to ask the same question, Mr. Anthony, then Mr. Mark Weber. We need your analysis on how actually AI and education industry work together, and what will be the prospect and opportunity for employment for our youth community.
Okay, I mean, honestly, I would like to listen more from Mr. Mark and Mr. Anthony, because I somehow feel that they have expertise, knowledge in AI and all those things. Actually, I'm doing a research in AI in education. So I will explain my purview. You asked me about the globalization. Before March 2020, my perspective of globalization was different. Okay, so globalization was the in thing where we all looking that's going to be a future and everything. But after the COVID pandemic days, we have a different meaning for globalization. We are scared of globalization. I find a lot of my people who are working with are really, like they have taken a back seat. So a lot to be discussed about globalization. I cannot admit the same theory what we discussed before, because future of globalization is entirely different. Though, of course, it's a very healthy aspect to be thought. But nowadays, after this issue coming inside, unexpected, unprecedented pandemic coming out, we have to look into globalization. Coming in artificial intelligence, yes, it's an happening, like a kind of a revolution what's been going on for the past 1 decade. And now it's been a very height. My research is on AI in education. We are trying to create chatbots in the classroom. So people used to ask me a question, if AI is going to come inside, do we lose jobs? No, it's like, we are getting into more of pessimistic thought by answering those things. It is part of a life. We cannot eliminate it. Boeing has bought, Airbus has bought, there are many things. Only thing is, if we can avoid singularity in AI is where we'll be able to survive on it. So more the discussion goes, we will discuss. But of course, globalization is very healthy. But the perception has changed, is my humble opinion. And you asked me about AI. Of course, it's also having AI and then IoT and blockchains. These are technologies which our kids cannot miss in future. So let us also hear from other panel members. Then we can take the discussion. Maybe we can start with Mr. Mark Anthony and then Mr. Mark as well.
Yes, Mr. Anthony, please.
Okay. Well, obviously, as a philosopher, my work actually gravitates. Most of it gravitates around the nature of consciousness, and of course, this is fundamental to AI, because around AI, we ask the question about machines: can a machine ever be fully conscious? What is consciousness? And of course, we then go into metaphysics and theology and quantum mechanics and so forth. Now, my argument and I'm going to touch on this very, very briefly. Consciousness is actually a quantum process. Consciousness is actually a quantum process. In other words, what I'm saying is the eye forms an image of the outer world on the retina and then transfers the information to the brain. And we have this feedback loop process. So consciousness is the continual creation of models, feedback loops within the brain that describe a model of our place in space and time. As I mentioned last month, space and time is an electromagnetic field, 0-point electromagnetic quanta. So consciousness is the continual creation of models. matter around us. Consciousness is the continual creation of models, feedback loops within the brain that describe a model of our place in space and time. Okay? So the eye forms an image of the outer world on the retina and then transfers it to the brain, and we have this feedback loop process. So consciousness is a quantum process. Okay, I'm going to touch on AI in a minute. So consciousness is actually a quantum process. In fact, the brain is a spatial temporal construct. It's a spatial temporal construct, okay? In fact, when we sleep in dream states, the mind creates space and time. So it's a quantum process. Consciousness is a quantum process. In dream states, the mind actually creates space and time. We are the consciousness of the universe, okay? Consciousness creates the universe, in fact. So it's a quantum process. So we go into quantum mechanics. Now, when we look at AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, it's all to do with transistors. A computer is essentially made up of transistors. And these transistors create a prototype form of consciousness, okay? A prototype form of consciousness. So we go back to saying, universally, what is consciousness? I've given you my philosophical angle on it. But the truth of the matter is, when you go deeper into it, you find that consciousness becomes a blur because the brain is far too complex. In fact, when you look at the brain is actually made up of hundreds of different structures, okay? The brain is made up of hundreds of different structures that regulate different things. The hippocampus, memory, the neurocortex, cerebral cortex, and so forth. It's made up of 800 or 900 computers, in quotes. It's made up of hundreds of computers, 800 computers, in quotes, that work together symbiotically. So to actually pinpoint consciousness becomes nothing but a blur when you actually go deep. Many religious people would argue that consciousness can only be explained in theological terms because, as I mentioned last month when I spoke about God and physics and metaphysics, that if we take into consideration that there is a creator, well, maybe consciousness is connected to this creator, and he is actually the spark behind consciousness. So in him we move and live and have our being. So this is the angle that I approach AI on, looking at the nature of consciousness. Could a machine ever be really truly conscious, and so forth? So this is one of the angles that I actually exploit. In terms of actually my science fiction books, I'm going to go a little bit ahead here in time, in the sense that I write about how machines in the future will not only take over man, in a sense, jobs and so forth, but will actually control our minds. And we could actually have a world that is actually dominated purely by artificial intelligence. And this could actually be achieved. I'm actually going to refer this to one of my short stories. Again, this is purely science fiction, but at the same time, there are elements of reality here. A world where we're completely dominated by AI. And actually robots not only render man completely obsolete, that we're completely controlled by them. They take over everything in every angle in terms of work and so forth. But they actually control our minds to the point where we actually have chips implanted within the brain, within the cerebral cortex, a nanochip implanted into the brain. And this nanochip has the capacity to actually register all cephalic activity, electrical and chemical. So it actually registers all thought, memory, and emotion. And via special signals, we can actually register all the information that is actually being collected on this chip via special signals and downloaded into a supercomputer for government consumption. So we're completely controlled. This is one of my short stories. So I sort of take AI to a very. Hello, you there?
Yes.
I take, obviously, being a science fiction author, I take artificial intelligence not only to a point where we're looking at machines taking over humans in the sense of jobs, but actually where they're taking over our minds. And as I said, in one of my short stories, and actually the blurb in this short story is, in a world where your thoughts and ideas are no longer your own, people that set out to conceal them are deemed evil. So robots actually take over mankind, and they actually control our minds. In my short story, Mind Blitz, which I published about 7-8 years ago. And so via nanochip within the cerebral cortex, this nanochip has the capacity to store all electrical and chemical activity within the brain, i.e. thoughts and emotions and so forth. And via special signals, all information is collected that has been stored on the chip and then downloaded on a giant computer for government consumption. And these are the sort of things I write about in science fiction. So obviously my work is very colorful and so forth.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Mr. Anthony. I want to go to Mr. Mark, Professor
Yeah,
Mark.
sure.
How you want to share this AI and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this engagement here?
Yeah, I think these are both very interesting opinions that we're hearing thus far, and it's obviously quite intriguing for discussion. I come from the field of education and I work in debate, and so obviously I have, I come from a different angle, but do not disagree. I do not disagree with what's being said here, and I find Mr. Anthony's uh, uh, fiction to be very interesting in regards to how much that could be have a potential relationship to real life, because I think, like, when we talk about AI in education, the first thing that pops into my mind is, obviously one of the things that all the schools around the world were forced into as of last February, March, April, was to go online, and teachers had to immediately convert their classrooms to being able to teach students online. I can think of no other industry that could make that kind of conversion so quickly that wasn't already online. And granted, part of education is online, but I think that one of the, we've learned a lot of things out of this as we go into, like, the new school year for calendar B schools that are starting in August and September. And there's the big debate about whether to go back to school live or whether to remain online, because there's a huge risk factor either way. Obviously, the risk factor of going back live is the idea of, will the children catch COVID? How immune are they to it? And even if they do catch it, what will be the health effects on them? Because apparently most young people, but not all young people, obviously are a little bit immune to the adverse effects that a lot of the adults are feeling. And they're having to weigh that idea with, well, now this is what the psychologists are saying, and a lot of the people that are into well-being realize that this lockdown, that like I'm in Colombia, so we're still under lockdown. We have a very strict, we can only go out for groceries or essential items, and then we have to come back to our homes and things like that. And even if you're not in that extreme of a situation, like, they're saying this is bad for children. They're not having the regular contact with their friends. They're not being able to get outside as much. They're not being able to have regular interactions. And psychologically, there's a lot of fear that psychologically this is going to be damaging to the children. And also, how much education are they going to lose? Because at the current time, we're not able to match the online education, possibly because we're not as skilled at it, or just possibly because of the limitations of being able to communicate with students. We're not able to match the education online with what they're actually the education that students are getting in person. And so there's a question of what are the consequences of that kind of damage. So what I see in regards to AI, and it was interesting, that the first gentleman brought up the idea of chatbots, because that was the first thing that popped into my mind, and how education will evolve through artificial intelligence. And I think that one of the things that is going to be an obvious goal is how to try to make the chatbots as realistic as possible, so that children don't feel like that they're so isolated if they are being educated in this manner. And also how to do what's called blended learning, and how to bring artificial intelligence and combine it with actual real life learning from a live person, whether it be online or in person. And I think that that's going to be, big question moving forward in the future for education, because even though we'll go back to some semblance of normal whenever the COVID virus passes, if it does indeed. It seems like it's ongoing forever here. I think that we're still going to take a lot of these hard lessons that we've had to learn out of this with us, and we're going to see a different type of learning no matter what happens. We're going to see different societies no matter what happens. And so and one other thing I want to throw in, because I was working with some debaters online last night from Canada that I teach, and one of the topics was that this house believes that artificial intelligence will be the death of us all. And so some of the students are, and I'm dealing with kids all the way from 6th grade to 9th grade students. These are very young kids that have a fairly good grasp on artificial intelligence because they think it's super interesting, which of course it is, and they were pontificating like, okay, is it going to be the death of us all, or because humans are the ones programming it, they'll be able to program it not to do bad things or not to do things that are going to be counterproductive to the existence of human beings. But I had the question for them, but if you have a computer system, and this comes from a very lay perspective on technology, that can teach itself, what kinds of things will it learn beyond what's been programmed in it? And that's where I get have a very interesting spark to hear what Mr. Anthony has said and his stories. I find that very interesting.
Yes. Professor Valley, I have a specific question to you. There is a big debatable issues in between like AI and human resources. How AI actually get integrated with the industry and the automations and all of the sectors. People will lose job. Human will lose jobs. And we have lack of resources, lack of trained human resources. So what will be futures? What do you think? Is it like how do you want to analyze on that particular point?
Okay, let us take from this as an example, Sharif. So recently, what happened was, you all must be knowing, March 10, 2019, we had an issue from Ethiopian Airlines, Max 7, the flight which got into, it went on and it crashed within crashed within 7 minutes. You always be knowing the incident, what happened. This is what normally citation. People always tell, that 737 Max Boeing got out because at one point of time that MC is maneuvering, it completely got out. Can you all hear me?
You're cutting in and out. Sharif,
Yeah.
you're muted.
Hello?
Okay, is it audible? Sharif?
No, Sharif is muted.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Now,
Yeah.
Yes. Please continue. Yes.
Yeah. The thing is, we used to ask the same question I used to ask, how was AI going to reflect? That incident, what happened was in the year 2019, that Boeing 737, after the flight took off, the flight, you all know what happened, and most of the flight got hit into the ground, and then the flight, we lost 159 people we lost. So we know as the front end news, it is just an casualty in flight. But the actual reason is, because I was a person doing research particularly about that incident, it is clearly that MCAS system, the maneuvering system of the flight, took the control on its own, and then the flight pilot could not hold it. Okay, so it is the reason that, at one point of time, the singularity, the automation gets its power, and then it takes on, the human could not control it. So it's an absolute example of what AI can be like disastrous. But again, it is not a pessimistic view. There are some incidents where AI will overrule. I completely agree with what the Shantanu was saying about the consciousness. It's an artificial intelligence. Machines are very smart, but we have to develop such kind of machines with ethics, which can really revert back to us in the right way. So I can give you n number of examples of what has happened before, how AI has overruled human beings. There are many incidents. But let us think in optimistic way. For example, in my industry, like how we are using, I was talking about the chatbots, right? So we are developing kind of a chatbot. Me, along with Dean Moffat University in UK, we are doing kind of a chatbot. But the chatbot can be a supplement for the lecturer. It cannot be a replacement, but it is a supplement. It can come to the class, It can answer the questions of the students. It can recognize your face. My chatbot can, if you lift your eyebrows, the chatbot can understand that there is a doubt you all have got. This is what we're trying to develop inside. So this is a kind of a, like a supplement for me in my class. So far, education industry, I have not seen any kind of transformation. It is always a teacher with the students. But maybe 10 years down the line, we might be finding a machine, a robot coming and teaching. Again, it cannot completely replace. Nobody can replace the teacher, is my whole opinion again. But it can be a new supplement can happen. So we are going good. We cannot stop it. There is no way that we can stop AI in future in many of our industries.
Yes, Professor. Actually, few of your discussion we cannot hear clearly because of technical problem. I understand. Actually, you from a different part of Malaysia, I can understand. But Mr. Anthony and Mr. Mark Weber, can you just like discuss about this issue that AI, how AI can be the challenges for human resources, and what will happen in the future? Yeah.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, as a science fiction writer, obviously I'm coming from the angle of a futurist, a philosopher and a futurist, and a sci-fi writer. So as a sci-fi writer, I'm looking ahead, and as I mentioned, I see AI as, I'm a transhumanist. So I'm all for artificial intelligence and robotics and so forth. It's automatic. As humans advance, it's an automatic progression in the evolution of mankind and so forth, for longevity and so on. But there are also the negative side, as I've mentioned within my books. Many science fiction writers always tackle the notion of AI potentially taking over mankind. This is something that science fiction writers like myself have executed with perfection, looking at the dangers, the potential dangers of AI. So I write a lot about, as I mentioned in my story, Mind Blitz, how in the future we could actually have a world totally controlled by robots. So in terms of employment, well, man would be rendered completely obsolete in its totality. And we'd have a world where basically everything was gravitating around artificial intelligence and so forth. So this is something that, is a potential in the future. And as I mentioned in my story, Mind Blitz, how in the future we can actually have a world where we're totally controlled by machine, to the extent, talking about transhumanism, where we have chips, as I said, nanochips implanted within the brain, within the cerebral cortex, that has the capacity to actually register all cephalic activity, electrical and chemical activity, emotions, and so forth. And via special signals, these signals are able to collect the information stored on the chip, and then it's downloaded onto a giant supercomputer. So our minds are completely exposed in the sense that there is no freedom of thought anymore. Now, this is something that obviously as a science fiction writer, I'm being very colorful in a sense. But the question that I need to mention now to you is this: is there any scientific credibility to this notion? How do you hack into the mind of a human being? Could we ever do that? Well, actually, we could. The way that you would hack into the mind of a human being would be to actually decode the logic of neurons. So basically, hacking into the mind of a human being requires decoding the logic of neurons, the mechanics of a neuron. And so through this process, we could actually one day have artificial intelligence where our brains were completely scanned. And we're actually going that way. This is science fiction, but this will be science fact in the future, no doubt about it. So actually hacking the brain of a human being via artificial intelligence requires decoding the logic of neurons. And as I mentioned in the story, a nanochip registering all cephalic activity, electrical and chemical, and via special signals, registering all the information stored on the chip, and then it's there for government consumption. So we're just nothing but organic robots. So I'm sort of talking about artificial intelligence to an extreme level. One of my other stories, if I have time to mention, do I have time?
Yes, you can.
One of my other stories that I have written about was actually the golden mind. In the future, the golden mind is actually to have a biological brain replaced by a mechanical brain. It's a science fiction story. And in the story, it's about basically in the future, they will replace a biological brain with a mechanical brain. Now, their argument is this: the mechanical brain will give you greater intelligence, greater understanding, and so forth, because it operates under certain artificial intelligence in terms of mechanics. But the personality of the individual will never be lost. because the brain and the mind are two separate entities. So the mind is really who we are. So the biological brain or mechanical brain doesn't make any difference, operates the same. So you never actually lose the essence of who you are. Whether it's a mechanical brain or a biological brain, the mind is separate to the brain. So it's only operating through, whether it's mechanical or biological. Yeah. And so they tell you that basically through this process, you will have greater intelligence, but you will still retain your personality. But the truth is, in this story, it's all to do with lobotomizing society and creating a world of mind-controlled organic robots. And this is, again, it sounds like science fiction, but we're actually heading this way in transhumanism. No doubt about it.
Yes.
So these are visions of the future. These are visions of the future.
Yes, Professor Mark, can you analyze the point of views about the AI and unemployment issues and what will happen? What's your analysis?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. I did get some of Professor Valle's comments, and there was some technical problems there, so I didn't catch it all. But one of the points that I did get out of what he said, and I appreciated, was that he's talking about from the perspective of education, that the AI will come only as a supplement and not really intended to replace teachers. And I have to say, from an educator's perspective, to be honest, a lot of us, will keep making the argument you can't replace the human teacher, partly because we fear being replaced. We don't want to be out of a job. We don't want to become obsolete. I mean, teachers already have it hard enough. So that's my first thinking. But I also do think it's going to be very, very difficult to replace the human experience. I mean, I work in recruitment and placement in education, and one of the things that, even though the statistics and the odds are against it, one of the things that schools still love to do is they love to go to hiring fairs, because they feel that they can sit in a room with someone for 15 to 20 minutes and tell better if they're a good teacher than they can on Skype or Zoom or whatever. So we even though there's no scientific basis for them to, in fact, the statistics show that they're not necessarily better off by judging people by their gut instinct. But even I feel that way. I feel like I have a really good sense for people, and when I meet someone, I just feel their energy. And I'm not like, one of these modernist people that are into the I forgot the term I'm trying to say, but that tries to reiki people or whatever, and I'm not making fun of that, but I'm just saying that that's not my thing, and so I do feel like I can sense somebody, and sense whether it's a good person or not. Or my dog can too. My little dog Coco, if she's barking at someone continuously, I'm always watching that person, so that's quite an interesting perspective. And I think that will always be with us, whether it's true or not, that we feel like that in-person connection is just so important. But I have to say, I have been surprised, since I've been doing online teaching only since the pandemic started, and I really feel pretty happy with the connections I'm able to get with my students, even online. I just finished a 2-week class with a group of students from Mexico yesterday, and I just felt like we were really bonded, and we were really close to each other. And I was so sorry to see them go, because they're such a wonderful group of students, And so, getting to the point about the employment in the future, and also taking in Mr. Anthony's point, I liked his idea, his perspective, that we can control people's mind by hacking into the neurons. I actually believe that is already happening with 35% of my countrymen who are still hardcore Republicans in the United States. Something must have gone wrong there. But anyway,
I'm glad someone agrees.
Yeah, they're voting for Trump, so they must be hacked into in some way, shape, or form. But here's the question that I ask, and that I'm concerned about. Two things, really, twofold. Is that one, I was reading some articles about this so I could have something to contribute on the level of these gentlemen here, about AI. And the thing is that, like, they're saying that, well, AI won't actually lose jobs, that it will increase jobs. But I'm like, well, wait a second, that doesn't really make sense to me. Why would you go through all the trouble to create AI if it's going to wind up costing you more money by increasing the number of jobs? That doesn't make sense to me. Unless, and the only answer can be, if we're going to increase productivity to such a great level that the net amount of jobs will still be less, but the overall number of jobs will be more. That's the only way I can see that being cost effective. But then if we do that and we're going to start increasing productivity, then my questions immediately go to what are we going to do? What are we going to do to the planet? Because we're on the hellbound train within the environment, and we're not looking back. I don't see people getting in the mindset of that we have to save the planet, and we're at the tipping point right now. So, like, if we're not even thinking about that right now, I don't really understand how we're going to improve ourselves in time to save us from going over the tipping point. But here's my question, because I do subscribe to Mr. Anthony's point, whether it be part of his science fiction or not. I think the beauty of science fiction is that it could be real, and that's where it catches people like us, and gets us interested, as he has already done with some of the stories that he's mentioned. What my concern is, when people do become obsolete and they are put out of jobs, let's just talk about, at least at this level, the very low skilled workers who may or may not be able to transition to another job, maybe or may not be able to be retrained for a job. It's inevitable. Some of those people are going to be without work. Are we going to take care of them? Are we going to give them a universal basic income so that they can live with dignity, even if they're not able to work? Because the thing that has really upset me during this COVID crisis is our inability to think about the average person on the street and to take care of those people. Even in my community here in Colombia, there's so many people going without food, and my wife and I have been, collecting money from other people to try to help some of these people out and stuff like that, because we don't see the government doing it, and we have no alternative but to do everything we can to help our neighbors. But when that happens on a mass scale, I mean, we've already seen what's happening around the world. We're not doing enough to help children who could be saved by $1 a day, and I don't want to be a commercial for one of these places that you would donate money to, but I do think that we have an obligation to help other people, especially when so many of us live with so much that we definitely have the obligation, to help others. But I wonder if that will happen on a systematic basis when we see massive unemployment through artificial intelligence, and that's my question for it all.
Yes, sir. Sir, I directly want to go to Professor Valley. Professor Valley, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Actually, I apologize to both the gentlemen, because I'm in the remote part of Malaysia. As you said, I'm having technical issues. I'm not able to hear you clearly. So if I'm allowed to officially, if I can excuse, I would like to put my ending statement, and I would like to listen to both of your views, because I'm enjoying both Mr. Mark Weber's view and then Mr. Anthony's view in philosophical view, and then your practical views. I'm really enjoying it out. But I really want to contribute. I want to speak more, but my technical thing, I'm unable to think. So if Sharif, you can allow me for 2 minutes, if I can just submit my views, then I can start listening to both of them.
Okay. Yes, please.
Yeah. Just to answer, Mr. Mark was telling the point that he's been teaching with online, and he's finding that people could be a replacement in the future, and then what happens if AI, it's coming in full future, what we're going to take care of the people who have lost their job. But this thing is, it happened already, sir. It happened 30 years back already. It has happened. People who are working in radio, people who are working in this kind of industry in agriculture, we thought that future is going to be technological agriculture, they might lose. But what happened was, they learned something called biotechnology, they're again employed. People who are working in radio, they again lost, they have come in television. People who lost in television, they have come again in media entertainment. So if AI is coming inside, rather, we getting worried, will they lose a job? I would say that I should start learning about AI and quantum physics. I cannot blindly say, oh my God, somebody's going to replace me inside. I should be proactive, and I really want to learn what's the future. I'm telling my son, please get into quantum physics now. That's what I'm teaching my son nowadays. No more, let's not get oriented with what has been happening now. Tomorrow it's going to be there, and nobody can stop us. Who thought that this kind of revolution is going to come? So in my view, I think that it's going to come. It's going to be coming for sure. We might lose jobs, but we can think in this way. Like if Boeing is, installing machines to make flights, why don't we learn that equipment, technological knowledge to be part of it? That's how we have to see. As in, and Mr. Mark is also from an academic industry, so we have more responsibility to create the future people to adopt this kind of technology. So this is my view, and I don't think so we should really get back towards it. We are going to come back for sure in AI. It's going to take the world. We have found Tesla cars. I think in America, you all must be knowing. I haven't seen the car. I'm really waiting to see the car in Malaysian roads. In California, I'm being told Tesla is driving without a driver. Excited to see that. Tesla has come without a driver. So we have seen a lot of revolution happening in the world now. So future, we have got no idea how it's going to be changing us. But if it comes, we are supposed to prepare, and then we are supposed to get educated for it. So this is my humble ending statement. So if you allow me, Sharif, I would like to, exit and then listen to both people, because they're pouring more of information. Rather than being contributor, I would be a spectator and learn from them. If you people allow me for it. Sorry for being technically.
Okay. No, I understand. I understand that, Professor Valley, actually for a remote area. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for your support and feedback.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Thank you, Mr. Mark. I will get the contact and we'll be in touch for sure. I'm going to listen to your views now, because I'm not able to speak, but I'm listening to all. Thank you, and I'll be a good spectator now.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Anthony. So you have a very good philosophical aspects and fiction and this kind of things. Mr. Mark has different kind of argumentations and real life experience. My observation is that what will happen the globalization next 2-3 years, and how actually technology, AI and other things will be integrated in the global arena, global market, not only in academia but also in different industry. What's your observation? What's your analysis?
My observation, as I've mentioned, obviously I take, as I've mentioned before, I take AI to maybe not another level, but I'm a futurist, so I'm looking ahead. AI is taking over. There's no doubt. AI is thinking for us. We can see this robotic revolution is perpetual, and it's increasing every day. Artificial intelligence now dominates every sphere of endeavor. We see it within the stock market, within financial institutions. We talk about multiple domains. AI is taking over. There's no doubt about it. And as I said, it's a great thing, but there is a potential danger in that it's thinking for us. And my vision is that we could reach a point where robotics completely nullifies our position in this planet. And as I've taken it to an extreme level with mind blitz, as I've said, nanochips in the brain, storing cephalic activity, then being registered on computers for government consumption. So we're being completely controlled, having our minds replaced with robotic brains, so that we're basically completely controlled by the government, and we are nothing but lobotomized organic robots. So I'm taking it to another level, in the sense that I can see that with all its benefits, artificial intelligence does also have the side of dangers, in the sense that AI is taking over. It's thinking for us. So we have to look at the positive sides of this, in terms of AI contributing to the academic and scholastic system, which I'm sure it will and is, and in many different spheres of endeavor. But there is a negative side that we're basically, there's a danger that AI is taking over. And as I said, as a science fiction writer and as a very creative person, as a philosopher, I introduce concepts of artificial intelligence literally taking over to the point where they completely dominate society, as in the government is actually controlled by artificial intelligence. And we become nothing but, paradoxically, inorganic robots with chips within our brains that store cephalic activity, and they literally can see in the brain and see exactly what you're thinking. And to hack into the mind as I mentioned, hacking into the mind is all to do with decoding the logic of neurons, looking at the mechanics of neurons, how neurons actually operate, and so forth. So, as a sci-fi writer, I'm looking, in a sense, very far ahead with the potential dangers of what AI could bring. But at the same time, AI has benefited us tremendously, absolutely tremendously. We can see that with terraforming Mars. I mean, I write extensively about terraforming Mars and so forth. I mean, I write a lot about terraforming Mars, and AI will help tremendously in terms of terraforming Mars and so forth. So I touch on the positive sides of AI, but also there's also the negative side where we're in danger of being completely dominated by artificial intelligence. But again, within my work, as I said, aside from this actual practical dimension, I look at the philosophical implications of AI. Is a computer really fully conscious? As I said, transistors make up a prototype form of consciousness in a computer. Yeah? Transistors make up a prototype form of consciousness within a computer. Within a human being, it's to do with neurons, the symbiotic action of neurons. Okay, that's part consciousness. But I go deeper than that, as I've mentioned. Consciousness is the continual creation of models, feedback loops within the brain that describe a model of our place in space and time. The eye forms an image of the outer world, transfers the information to the retina, and then to the brain, and we have this feedback loop process. So I go into the very deep metaphysical concepts about what is consciousness and the dangers of AI and so forth.
Yes. Professor Mark, what you want to contribute, how you want to contribute in terms of globalizations and other things?
Well, I want to comment a little bit on Anthony's points. I think they're just very fascinating, and I'm sitting here listening to him going, I want to read this guy's books, very, very interesting stuff, and I understand that he's a gentleman that enjoys, looking into our dystopian future, but also he's spot on with a lot of this stuff because, like, at least the part about the idea of allowing the robots to take over, we're already normalizing that. If you look at the concepts that were developed when they started making self-driving cars, one of the problems or one of the complaints about a self-driving car was, that if a self-driving car has to make a calculated decision in an inevitable accident, it might actually kill the driver because it might calculate that is less harm than perhaps driving off the road and running into a group of school children, and then I guess people were kind of indignant about that, and it's like, well, if it's my car, I should be the one that gets protected. Let's kill the school children or whatever, and so but that might seem a little bit humorous to us or something like that, but that is the first step of normalizing these kind of things where artificial intelligence will make decisions for us that could be counterproductive or counterintuitive to our existence. And as we know, then, we can call it slippery slope fallacy, or we can call it the gateway to the future, as Mr. Anthony's doing. But also the idea of hacking into the brain, like the governments have been trying to do that for years. I mean, who knows if they can or can't do it already? I mean, I would be willing to bet that there's at least some form of mind control. I mean, I know I was joking earlier about the Trump voters and those kind of things, but the thing is, when we get to the reality of this, what the thing that we have to question, is that, like, and like building off of my earlier statement about the only way forward in the future, if AI is actually going to produce more jobs than we're going to lose, is that we have to increase productivity, because that's supposedly the end game of some theorists, is that AI would create a world where no one has to work anymore. Not saying people won't work. I mean, like, if my food and shelter and everything was taken care of, I would definitely still work until the day I die. I love work. I love being an educator, and that's my life's passion, and I've always want to be doing that. I mean, working with young children or high school children, it's, in my opinion, the greatest thing that anyone can do. But the point is, will people hoard those resources when there is a surplus? And for what reason would they need to hoard those resources if there's enough for everybody? I mean, like, will that be a game changer, or will the people want to collect all the pieces on the monopoly board for themselves, or will they say, okay, well, we all have enough now? Can we just share this? Can we just make sure that everybody gets to share in this and live in a dignified fashion? And I'm sorry I keep going back to that, but to me, obviously, that's my number one concern. And so, will AI create that kind of bounty of resources where nobody has to work anymore, although people may choose to work, or they may choose to go and enrich their lives in other ways? And two, will we be smart enough to say everybody deserves a share in this, and we have to divide up the pieces of the pie equally? And what kind of government would that look like?
Yes, yes. Mr. Anthony, as you are a writer, then you have a very good futuristic idea, thoughts, and analysis. My question is that, let's say we are talking about different kind of technology and different kind of technological advantage, but how we can make check and balance? Let's say how state should play their role. What Mr. Mark said, that regarding unemployment, regarding creating more job opportunities, how actually state should play a role. How they should protect their human resources, how it will be more, I want to say, more good for human resources. What your observation? What your analysis?
Uh-oh.
I think Mr. Mark. Okay, you can continue. You can continue on these questions. Maybe Mr. Anthony will join. Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking forward to hearing his answer about that, because I mean, obviously, as a science fiction writer, he's put in the position where he has to maybe make the story more interesting, whether he's actually a pessimist or not. I think that's the whole concept of dystopian future, is to be pessimistic, but in hopes of possibly teaching us lessons for now. And I'm being honest with you, my feeling is that we won't adjust to that. Just like I mentioned earlier, we're not adjusting to climate change, and we're heading on the hellbound train with a gun to our heads, with our own gun to our own heads, and you don't see people turning around. You don't see industries making the change. There was even articles a couple of years ago about whether climate scientists were going to go to the climate conferences anymore, because they said it's all symbolic action. It's all bullshit. Sorry to use a vulgar term like that, but that is basically what it was. And that the governments are not interested in doing what is necessary to turn things around in regards to climate. Even when we had liberal politicians in the United States, and I'm sure you can see this example around the world, sure, they were joining the climate treaties and stuff like that, and then going in there and debating whether we should take such extreme measures, even though the scientists were saying these are the things you have to do to change things. And still, and I understand we've got to balance the economy. I mean, I admit I'm not an economist, but I at least understand the concept that people have to eat, people have to work, people have to be able to have jobs to and put a roof over their heads. But we know that there's other ways to do that. The problem is that it's all become politicized. The whole concept of, should we move to renewables, or should we use up the remaining resources of fossil fuels? That's more of a political decision that's being made than it is an environmental decision, or an ethical decision, or a humanist decision. And so that's a very big problem. If I was going to take all the signs, like right now we have enough in the world to feed everybody, we have a distribution problem. And hopefully organic farming was going to change that. Mr. Anthony's back. Let's let him.
Yes. Yes. Like we are
sorry
just
about that. The Wi-Fi here. I'm sorry.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
I understand. Like regarding this, globalizations as well as the unemployment issues, what states should take their policy? How states should protect the human resources? They from different kind of technological advantage, and how states should play their role. Yes,
Well,
this is.
in my opinion, this is going to sound very sort of George Orwell. I think, in my opinion, we're being controlled. Okay, I believe that the controlling powers are using artificial intelligence to completely dominate man. As I've mentioned before in Mind Blitz, in a world where your thoughts and ideas are no longer your own, people that set out to conceal them are deemed evil. They're using artificial intelligence to control our minds, our thoughts, and so forth. Okay, so it's very difficult for me to answer that question in a sense, because my opinion is something that I believe that artificial intelligence, with all its benefactors and its tremendous benefits, there's no doubt about it. But I believe that AI is being used to control us. There's no question about that. As I've mentioned in Mind Blitz, microchipping the mind, storing cephalic activity within the brain, getting signals to register all their data that's been stored on the chip for government consumption. I mean, that sounds science fiction, but that's happening today. I mean, I've taken it to a futuristic dimension, but it's happening today. There's no question about it. I mentioned the golden mind, how in the future they will replace a biological brain with a mechanical brain, and they will introduce it in the form of a lotto win. If you've won the golden mind, you've won that's the ultimate lottery win. And through media, they lobotomize society, as they're doing now, through media and television, to make you believe that this is an incredible thing, the golden mind. But really, it's just to create a world of organic robots. And that's what they're doing now. There's no question about it. That's what they're doing now, to create a society of organic robots. So the golden mind is basically something futuristic, but it actually connects and correlates with what's happening today, in the sense that, as I said, you replace a biological brain with a mechanical brain, and they tell you that you're still going to retain your personality. But the truth is, you're nothing but an organic robot. And this is a story that has vast implications, as in what's actually happening today. So AI has great benefits. There's no doubt about it. But AI is being used to actually to control people, to control their minds. As I go back to what I said before, how do you actually hack into the mind of a human being? Well, it basically requires decoding the logic of neurons, the mechanics of how a neuron operates. So we go into quantum mechanics, in a sense, when we go into that sort of dimension. So my vision of AI is one that it has its positives. There's no question about it. But there's also the negative side. But I want to sort of jump away from that angle for a moment, going back to the nature of consciousness. In order for a human being to be human, you have to have actually a certain brain size, which is connected to consciousness. In order to be human, you have to have actually a certain brain size in order to accommodate enough atoms within the brain to make the brain complex enough to be human. Within science fiction, in fact, Isaac Asimov, he did a story about biological miniaturization, how in the future you could actually miniaturize a human being to do a particular task. Well, this actually is, and he mentioned this himself, it actually violates the laws of physics, because you can't actually miniaturize atoms. You can't actually create a human being and miniaturize a human being to the size, for example, of a shoe or a mouse or an ant, because what you would create, if you could create that, would be something that wouldn't be human, because human means to have a certain brain size, which is interconnected with consciousness. Human means to have a certain brain size. So to be human means to have a certain brain size in order to accommodate enough atoms to make the brain complex enough to be human. Incidentally, miniaturization of human beings, biological miniaturization of human beings, is actually violates the laws of physics. You can't miniaturize atoms. You can't miniaturize atoms. So this belongs to fantasy. But if you could do that and miniaturize a human being, what we would produce would be something that wouldn't be human anymore, because consciousness, human means to have a certain brain size in order to accommodate enough atoms to make the brain complex enough to be human. So I sort of degravitated away from my last point, but I thought I'd just mention that as well.
Yes. Professor Mark, how you want to analyze, because Mr. Anthony come up with the different perspective. What's your opinion? Yeah.
I actually have a question for him that I think is interesting, and I'm wondering, if the government is doing these things, and in your perspective, the one thing I will say is we're looking at the government as if they were a separate entity from the people. And in some ways, of course, they are in a practical sense. But overall, when we look at governance and government in theory, it is of the people, by the people in general. But my question is, to what end do you think that the government is doing this? What's their objective? What's their end game there? Besides, obviously, control. But I would still say that begs the question, control for what purpose? Well, why do you think that kind of thing is being done?
Okay, well, I'm going to have to divulge into history here. In 1776, we had Adam Weishaupt, who formulated the Order of the Illuminati. In 1776, we had basically the formation of the Illuminati. We had the French Revolution, which was actually the first, in quotes, Illuminati imprint into the world, with the whole French Revolution. And the guillotine, Mr. Guillotine himself was actually part of the Masonic Lodge himself, and actually was executed in the end, ironically. But what it is to actually create, to create, through chaos, you establish order. Through chaos, you establish order. Order out of chaos. You create chaos, and then you establish order. So you create the chaos, then go in as the savior with the cheese, and the frightened mouse then come to you. And so you basically create a world that you want, in terms of politically, financially. I mean, the whole thing with COVID. I mean, we're now heading towards a cashless society where there will be, again, going back to the chip, there will be no need anymore for cash. You'll have a chip implanted into your arm, and everything will take place within the chip. You'll basically you'll be paying via a chip. Of course, it makes it very easy for the government when they want your taxes or whatever it may be, just to go on the computer. That's it, done. So we're heading towards a cashless society. So order out of chaos. Through chaos, you establish order. You create a new economic system. You create a new way of thinking. You make changes, because what you do is psychologically, it's all to do with psychology. You break down the people. You break down the people. You create chaos. You drop a bomb. You create chaos. During chaos, what happens? Psychologically, people are frightened and they're looking for a savior. Now, so what happens is they create the chaos and then present themselves as the savior. And then through that, they create changes, economic changes, financial changes, political changes, and they restructure the world around their philosophical view, which is to have basically a world that is totally controlled by AI, and our minds become nothing but government consumption. And they can do this through chipping the mind, as I've mentioned, and so forth. So, yeah.
But
yes, Mr. Mark, yeah.
Can I ask him another question then? So,
Sure.
But the point is, it's not unusual for people to distrust their government. I mean, I know that is we think uniquely, and I no longer live in the United States. I haven't lived there for 20 years, but I still distrust them from afar, as I think is a very good advice to anybody. But it's not uncommon for people to distrust the government. So why don't you think that this might actually cause a revolution instead of people running to the government for shelter? Like right now, I see people blaming the government for the COVID-19 crisis and for it being exacerbated to the level it has, and they're not wrong. I do think that many of the governments have made really stupid decisions, that even the average person could have sorted out and said, look, we've got to take these precautions no matter what, because we don't know what this virus is and what it's going to bring and all that. Why wouldn't it maybe cause the opposite effect?
Yes. One point I just want to add, because example country, like example Malaysia, Vietnam, Taiwan, this kind of country, they are very small, but in terms of healthcare systems and controlling and managing the COVID-19 situations, they actually take a very good initiative, and I want to say they are very successful to handling this COVID-19 situation. Even economical challenges, managing these economical challenges, they are playing a very good role. What's your observation in terms of big countries and the big economy, big investments, and this kind of small countries, but they prove that they have a better ecosystem right now? How actually globally we can transform this kind of things? Yeah.
So you're asking me that? Sorry, because you were breaking up.
Yes. No.
Sorry, you were breaking up. You were breaking up when you were speaking. So I've got sort of sporadic bursts of audio. You might have
No
to
problem.
repeat yourself. I didn't hear it very well.
Okay, no. My question is that.
Okay, I got you now. I got you now.
Okay, my question is that, you hear Mr. Anthony's question, Mr. Mark Weber question?
Yes.
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 Okay, so my question is that different kind of small countries, let's say Malaysia or Vietnam or example Taiwan, they are playing a very good role for handling this COVID-19 situations. So how actually global governments in that pandemic situation, how we can collaborate more and we can learn from each others. And what's your observation? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you. Well, as I said, obviously this virus has caused a massive ripple effect throughout the world. There's no question about it. In terms of its point genesis, my opinion differs to many, but I won't go into that today. We'll save that for another day. No question about it.
Another story.
But it's another story. But the dynamic remains the same. Order out of chaos. It doesn't matter where you're positioned geographically. At the end of the day, the controlling powers do what they have to do. A domino effect. Order out of chaos. Psychology. And this is global. So it doesn't matter where you're situated geographically. In terms of dealing with this situation that we have before us, well, I guess we go into sort of a moral philosophy here. We need to fight this situation together in a sense as humanity, and that requires strength, perseverance, and obviously observing certain regularities in order to actually fight this virus that is obviously out there and killing many people. But in terms of actually the dynamics as to how this virus came about, well, all goes back into my books of Mind Blitz and so forth. So,
Okay,
but I'll save that for another day.
Yes, okay, definitely, Mr. Mark Weber. My question is that you are a part of debating community, and you handle many young communities, and you move around the world. Even I think you have experience in Malaysia as well. You move around the world. So my question is that in that pandemic situations, in these challenging situations, like how you think about young people, how actually they can change and this challenge, like the world, or how they can make a more positive impact in that challenging situations. What the preparation they need? What your observation?
Well, I think they're already doing those kind of things. I mean, if you look at revolutions around the world, lots of times they've started with university students and young people. I mean, that's the only hope we have for the future, you know. And I know we keep saying that because we want to hand off and we want to aggrandize these young people because we want to prepare them for the task in front of them. So that's happening. But the question is it enough? Is it enough soon enough? You know, I mean, the thing is that we have to prepare. They have to prepare themselves, you know, and they have to decide on the world that they want to live in. And if I was going to say there's one thing that they could do better, and that would be that they need to get out there and vote. But is that, you know, also then playing into this same system that's trying to, because I agree with Mr. Anthony that chaos is power, chaos is order, you know, and that is like if you just look at the United States foreign policy in the Middle East, there's no way in hell we've been trying to bring peace there. You know, we are trying to seed chaos so that we can keep our thumb in the pie and keep order over people that it benefits us to control, you know. And so the fact of the matter is these young people need to take control, whether it's by the vote or by revolution or whatever it is. And I do think that they're intelligent enough. I do think that they've got the right ideas. I mean, when I work with these young kids, unfortunately, you know, the kids I work with in debate are just amazing. You know, I have no doubt that they can change the world and hopefully shape it in a better way for their future existence, but they've got to do it quickly. I mean, if the scientists are anywhere close to right, we're already seeing some of the, you know, the natural disasters coming about due to global warming. Global warming's here now. You know, we don't have to wait and say, oh, you know, this is what's going to happen in 50 years. This is happening now. You know, we're already seeing some of the repercussions. And so I just think that they need to get more politically involved involved and they need to take control. Because I actually don't agree with Anthony that there is an Illuminati group, whether it's a de facto Illuminati that's controlled by the rich poor gap and that 1% at the top. Hell yeah. Tell me the military industrial complex doesn't control the politics in many of the countries that we talk about. For sure they do. And when you have the Bush family and the Bin Laden family invested in the same Carlyle group at the same time, tell me there's not some shenanigans happening there. But the fact of the matter is somehow we have to wrestle the control from these people, and we have to take the right side of, first of all, we are the right side of the debate, but we've got to take the control back from these people, and we've got to come up with a more civilized world if the human life is worth keeping, and if we want to perpetuate our existence. It's the only way these things can happen.
Yes. Mr.
Sorry, just thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, Mark, for your take on that. Talking about whether actually through electromagnetic radiation, you can actually change the molecular structure of the ionosphere through HAARP, which the military actually have within their control, connected to what I said, the people that control. Through HAARP, you can actually change the molecular structure of the ionosphere, which means that you can actually create certain weather conditions which they actually induce through electromagnetic radiation. But again, we'll save this maybe for another discussion.
Yes. Okay. I want to go for concluding remarks. What's your opinion, Mr. Mark Weber, regarding this AI, globalization, and employment? What's your advice for the young community? And Mr. Anthony, what's your advice for the youth community, based on this globalization, AI, and employment opportunities? How they can take preparation, how they can grow, and how they can develop themselves? I want to start with Mr. Mark. Yeah.
Okay. So, like what I said a moment ago, get out there and vote. If voting actually works, which, for a long time, Noam Chomsky, who's my favorite political analyst, and I think if we have a claim to an intellectual in the United States, it is definitely Noam Chomsky. He used to say, don't vote. It only encourages them. And now he's gone to the message, vote for anybody but Trump, and I do think that at least in the short term, voting is the only thing that we have. But the other thing is, I would encourage these people to young people to get out there and run for office. Look at AOC, look at many of these young people who have gone out there. You've got to take control of your government, and you have to take it away from people who've been in office for 30 and 40 years. And even if you think they have the best intentions in you, and even if you want to vote for them because they fit your political philosophy or whatever, they've been sitting there for 30 and 40 years and they haven't done a damn thing to make things better. They've only given us incremental symbolic change, symbolic action that's been a disappointment. I think it's time for revolution, and I don't necessarily mean the armed type unless it has to come to that as a last resort. But I do think a political revolution needs to happen, and that can only come through these young minds that we have out there, and they are the ones who have to take control. If we're going to change anything, they have to stop being apathetic when it comes to election day, and they have to get out there and they have to do something about this, and I'll vote for them, if that's all I can do.
Yes, Mr. Anthony. Yeah.
Okay, with my closing remarks, obviously, being a science fiction author and a futurist and a philosopher and so forth, a lot of my opinions are something that I believe will happen in the future. So me speaking about this now, in a sense, doesn't correlate with natural reality, as in what's happening now. So these are things that I see far off, being a futurist. But with all the negative things that I've mentioned about AI and so forth, there's a lot of positive things with artificial intelligence, as I've mentioned, in terms of terraforming and so forth, within astrophysics, within the scholastic system, within the educational system. Artificial intelligence is aiding tremendously in many, many different spheres of endeavor. So these are the positive things, no question about it. But in terms of what I've mentioned, I am without any doubt sure that in the future we're looking at a world totally controlled by AI. There's no question about it. In fact, it's almost happening now. They're controlling our minds in every domain, and it's only going to perpetuate throughout time. It's a natural progressive evolution, and this will happen through transhumanism and so forth. But in terms of the benefits of AI, there are endless benefits. There's no question about it. So that's how I will conclude my my presentation.
Yes. Thank you,
Mark,
Mr. Anthony.
by the way, Mark, I'm going to have to connect with you on Facebook. I'll send you a friend request, and I'm going to send you a few PDFs. Okay.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. For our audience, you can share your book or your academy or anything we're going to share with our audience. And most important thing is that World Talent Economy Forum, we do some live sessions, and we have our research center, Asia Research and Development Institute, Al Noor Academy, Sarhadia Barhad. I think Mark Weber can understand about the Malaysia. So we are doing a lot of research. We are doing a lot of conference and the summit. Most importantly, we try to change human life. We try to learn from the people like you, people like Mr. Mark Weber, people like Mr. Anthony, people like Professor Valleys, and there are many guests around the world. They're joining the World Talent Economy Forums, and they're sharing their views, they're sharing their write-up, they're sharing their research, and many of the interesting things. And definitely, we try to introduce all of the great information with the young population, with the different countries and different cultural people, that they can learn from your perspective, they can learn from the knowledge, and hopefully in the future we can make more efficient and more effective program together. Then we will invite you more and more. And already we have some very good audience from Mr. Mohammad Shoail Rana, Ali Nawaz Mahmoud Khorum, even he was a parliament member, Sandri Deep and Sharif, everybody actually observing your discussion, and they said it's a very good discussion and valuable information they are getting from you and from the from Mr. Anthony, from Mr. Mark Weber and the Professor Valley. So this is the way we need to create the better ecosystem. I always believe we need to create better ecosystem. So when we can create a better ecosystem, then we can improve together. Then we can overcome from this situation. We never know. Maybe it's the started on the COVID-19. Maybe we get more challenges in the future. So when we can create a better ecosystem together, then we can grow together and we can handle the different challenges together. So that is the objective of World Talent Economy Forum. And definitely in the future, we get all of your support and advice and the guideline and your mentorship. Thank you for your very effective, very valuable and very informative discussion.
Selamat pagi.
Thank you, Sharif, and thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure, Mark.
Thank you,
we'll
Anthony.
connect
It was
later,
a pleasure.
okay?
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Sharif. Bye-bye.
Yes.